Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have a great show for you today on Gojo and Golic. Here's what you have to look forward to. Adam Wainwright going to join the program to talk about MLB playoffs. All the series are tied at 1 right now. Pretty crazy. Plus, is this guy falling in Alabama? Probably after losing to Vanderbilt. We will talk about that. Plus, they see me scrolling, they hate me patrolling and trying to catch me riding dirty. We will talk best social media that we saw over the weekend. All that and more coming up on Gojo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Michael Jr., Michael Sr., and Jesse Cofield. We're presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal, and we've got a great show for you today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. As Jesse mentioned, I am very much looking forward to one of the things on the internet that we threw out to you guys and that you delivered on big time after last week, where my father admitted to having a paper word search book that he brought on planes. I asked you for the oldest thing that your parents do as a habit, and my God, there are a lot of these things that I see myself in. Dad, it's less calling you old and more just saying there are certain behaviors that are indicative of that I would call dad behaviors, parent behaviors that I think, one, you'll identify with, but two, I also think that people me and Jesse's age, your children's age, would also identify with, because this is how we've been raised too here. So don't prematurely take offense to this. This isn't a slight.
Oh, no. No. It's mocking. It's mocking the elderly. It's mocking the elderly. Everybody who's going to read these is going to chuckle. It's mocking the elderly. And you as children, I'm sure, hope that you don't end up with those characteristics. And you probably won't, because you come from a different era. So the things that we're going to talk about are more from my era. So I don't expect you or Jesse to pick those things up. But let's not act like this is some nostalgia thing that we're just kind of looking back on the good old days and dads are kind of trying to keep that alive. You're mocking the elderly.
Well,
Again,
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear some of the things that the elderly are doing, you will also laugh and probably mock yourself.
Do you want us, do you want us, before we do the segment, to print you out a paper copy of it so that we can go through it on paper?
It's funny, Jesse. That's funny. Again, mocking the elderly. Yeah. You're mocking the, you know what? And all these things we're going to talk about are valid. They are valid.
All right, you know what? Coming up at 9 o'clock, the segment now renamed Mocking the Elderly here on Gojo and Golic that we have to look forward to. But in the meantime, we get to look back on what was actually an impressive show of force by the Kansas City team that, Dad, to your credit yesterday, when we talked about many people willing to go and utter words about the demise of the Chiefs or the potential that this Chiefs team that is still undefeated now was going into last night might actually not be a version of the Chiefs you should buy into. And you said, said, hey, pump your brakes. This team is still undefeated and deserve the benefit of the doubt. And last night, they went out there and showed you exactly why they are still deserving of such. They have a 26-13 win against the New Orleans Saints, Dad, that, listen, you can quibble about some of the red zone issues that turned some of those trips into field goals that kept this game closer than it might have been longer. But the bottom line was we saw the most impressive performance from this Chiefs offense last night. What'd you like about it, Dad?
Well, and we saw an impressive performance by the defense as well. Neither side of the ball had kind of lived up to what they were doing this year, yet they were still undefeated. And quite honestly, the more important conversation might be what the hell's happening with New Orleans after first two games of the season where they put up 40 burgers and had 91 points in the first two games. But we'll get to that because it's about the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. Listen, we'll sit there and pick apart issues that they have, but they're undefeated and they have Pat Mahomes. So they're always going to be favored. And it's just a matter of how they play. A lot of times when they get beat, now it's the NFL going undefeated. Obviously, the last time was 72. So it's not like we're talking about going undefeated, yet we have two undefeated teams. So obviously you keep an eye on that. But a lot of times, it's the old Bill Belichick, you capitalize on other teams' mistakes, or I should say, even on its own legs, you beat yourself. And that's how it seems the Chiefs are going to lose. They'll get outplayed occasionally, but they'll make mistakes. And right now, the only issue, well, they have two issues, is the red zone and protection of Pat Mahomes. And, Mike, you can talk more to that as the offensive line, which has one of the better interior offensive lines in the game. Pat's feeling a lot of heat. He's been sacked, I think, 9 times, but he's feeling more heat and on the run. But red zone issues, I mean, in close games, those pop up. 4 field goals by Harrison Butker of 26, 34, 28, and 38. Now, you hear the distance of the field goal. Understand where the ball is when that field goal is kicked. It was on the 8-yard line, the 16-yard line, the 10-yard line, and the 20-yard line. So, and the last one, they're kind of running the clock out, not really going for a score. So I kind of will let that one go a little bit. And then there's an interception in the red zone as well. So they do have red zone issues, which in tight games can cost you. But Mahomes throwing for over 300 yards. It's now 23 games. And this is normally, you talked about this stat with San Francisco, yards after the catch. This is now their 23rd game with over 200 yards after the catch. I mean, that is impressive because we know, and some are deep balls, but for the most part, this is the NFL now. It's short passes, and it's let the wide receiver, tight end, running back do the damage. And boy, they did that well last night.
Yeah, there were really only a couple of plays where they went downfield at all. There were some deep shots to Xavier Worthy in the third quarter that finally did stretch the field. One of them drew a pass interference penalty that got them down into the red zone for another try where they came out with points. But to your point, Dad, that's not yet a consistent part of this offense. What we saw with this Chiefs offense and what I think answers a question about the early portion of the season is, okay, hey, they got news that for Rashee Rice, the injury might not be as bad as they thought it sounds like, but they still can't plan on having him back for the season. And so what do you have to do? You got to break glass because of emergency on the Travis Kelce button. All the people wondering about the slow start for Travis Kelce earlier in the year, Dad, in my mind, the last 8 quarters now kind of confirm what we talked about on the show, where this was a decision a lot more than it was a failing on Travis Kelce's part, where they understand, hey, we got a 35-year-old with a lot of miles on him that we know works well in this offense. We don't need to use that until later if we don't have to. And right now they had to. Travis Kelce had 3 catches alone on the first drive of this game and ends up with a bunch on the night, where we see, all right, if he needs to still be the number one option for this offense, which he was, like he was the one they established early to then go help free up things for a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster who had a career night with 130 yards receiving. I think that, to me, Dad, was a reminder that they know how to do this with Travis Kelce. And so the question going forward this season is going to be, how often do you have to do this during the regular season? And if that's the case, what does that do affecting you in the postseason? Because that's a lot to ask of a guy his age at that position to shoulder the load for an entire long regular season.
Yeah, listen, the demise of Travis Kelce has been very, very premature. Though he is getting up there in age, when asked to get the job done, he's still getting the job done. And Juju Smith-Schuster coming back to the Chiefs. I mean, he had 8 targets. Kelce had 10 targets. The rest of anybody who had a target, 2, 4, 6 players, had 14 targets total, and those 2 had 18 targets. So that was where they were going. Travis Kelce certainly is able to pick up the slack, even though I agree it was a usage issue, knowing that you needed him for the entire season, especially late in the season. But when asked to produce, he produces, even catching the ball and pitching it, of which he is now, like as Pat Mahomes is known for a behind-the-pack pass and magician-like moves, escaping pressure. Travis Kelce is now known for not just catching the ball and not just a hook and lateral that comes at the end of games. He just will do it. He'll run and he'll just pitch the ball. He did it to Samaje Perine during the game on a 3rd and long, to which Perine just almost got the first down. They ended up going for it on 4th down and making it. But you just expect the unexpected with Travis when he catches a ball.
And they asked Perine about it after, and he said, I learned the first practice that you've got to be ready for that, because I think there was some confusion about this during the game. People are fascinated by this, and just like when we had the Omaha thing go on where we caught that on the mic and everyone wanted to know more about was a cadence. In this case, Andy Reid got asked by Lisa Salters at halftime if that's a called play. It was what Troy and Joe were talking about in the booth. And I just don't believe that during the body of a game that's a call play. But Andy Reid said they practice that all the time. I can't tell you what it is. Dad, I would say it's much more likely that what they practice all the time is being ready for Travis Kelce to improvise on the fly in a way no one else would be sanctioned to do. But you're aware of, hey, when Travis catches the ball in certain areas and certain spots, you probably, based on route combinations, want to be ready for the pill to come your way. And thankfully all these guys are, because, Dad, that was like an underhand toss on the fly. It wasn't like there was a ton of warning, and Perine ends up making it, and it ends up being a pivotal play. I think that creativity from him, and certainly, Dad, the story of the night, Mahomes' creativity in the pocket, are 2 things that end up becoming huge swings for the Chiefs at multiple junctures of the game.
Yeah, they were only up 3 at that point, and that started out as like a 2nd and 20 or 30 some yards. I mean, it was 2nd and long. And you're right, as far as maybe not the design play call, but you understand when Travis has the ball, especially in the middle of the field, and he was running across the field on this one. Even if you're behind the play, normally you're out of the play. If you're behind a receiver catching a ball, you learn to stay alert and to follow the play, kind of like following, being like the pitch man in an option play. But this one, I mean, Travis kind of threw it far. I mean, he just kind of, like the referee, when the referee will throw the ball off the field with that underhand throw and zip it to the sideline, that's what Travis did. I mean, that's a risky move because it went a number of yards. Perine wasn't right next to him. He kind of lofted that one underhand, and it was a perfect pitch. And again, Perine ran with it and just about got the first down, of which, as I said, they went for it on 4th down and made it.
So that's certainly one of the images of the night, but Travis having 9 catches for 70 yards in this game, a big story, part of that, again, I think shift back to having him be the focal point of the offense that we saw the full breadth of last night. I think last night was a win for Andy Reid and the creativity of the staff working around with their parts. Again, we saw 3, sometimes 4 tight ends on the field for them, but we also saw their ability to go back and make old things feel new again. Juju Smith-Schuster, who came out and during his time with the New England Patriots, remember, did not produce very much, had 260 yards in his whole season with the Patriots and had half of that total last night because he's back in a Chiefs offense where he doesn't have to be the number 1 option or anything close to that. He fits in well with what they want him to do as a pseudo tight end. Kareem Hunt comes back over, 27 carries for 102 yards as the feature back on an offense that doesn't have Isaiah Pacheco now. Dad, that was really, if we're looking for the story of this game and what you can take away to feel good about with the Chiefs, is they were able to play call in a way that totally maximized their strengths and tried to limit their weaknesses, which is still left tackle. You saw Wanye Morris go down a little bit, and Kingsley Suamataia had to come back in. That position's still going to be a struggle. Edge protection in general is going to suffer, but they mitigated that by leading with a dominant run game led by that interior offensive line. And so I think that's going to be the formula for the Chiefs going forward. And so that specific game script helps for them, and it's why you can feel good for the most part, because this staff tapped back into a bunch of things we've seen them already do with players we've already seen them do it with, who might be past their prime and will certainly have a shelf life. At some point, these guys aren't going to be able to out-talent a lot of people, Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster at this point in their careers, but they fit well into the Chiefs' assembly line that's led by Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Oh, without a doubt. I think assembly line is a good term, and while there are those that say, oh, they got to pick up the rushing attack and only average 3.6 yards per rush. No, a lot of times it's about attempts. It's about ball control. They ran the ball 39 times and they passed the ball 39 times. A perfect 50-50 split, 39 carries, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. Helped them control the ball. They almost doubled up New Orleans. They were just under 40 minutes of time of possession. And so New Orleans, when they had to score quick, and they couldn't do it. Now, this was a 1-score, 2-score game, but New Orleans only ran the ball 15 times, and they actually only passed it 35 times. They didn't have the ball a lot. They only had the ball for 20 minutes. So they had to make hay when they had the ball because they didn't have a lot of time with it.
No, they didn't. I mean, we can talk about them. So, putting a bow on the Chiefs, who now go into their bye week. Patrick Mahomes gets to go watch his Kansas City Royals as they come back to Kansas City after a win in New York that we'll talk about last night. Dad, that team feels really good. That was a healthy win for them in a lot of ways going into this. But part of that was also, Dad, the quite literal lack of health of the New Orleans Saints that swung the balance of this game. Because while the defense fought the good fight for a while in this game, the offense was just too beat up to party, and it's exactly where we talked about going into this game, Dad. The interior of that offensive line that's down Eric McCoy, down Cesar Ruiz, and last night even saw injuries during the game to Lucas Patrick that had Connor Williams, who they had signed off the Jets practice squad, going in there to center. That group along the interior had been the bedrock for the offense that was consistently putting up 40 points the first 2 games of the season, and now has since suffered once that's been cracked, because Derek Carr's not the kind of quarterback that can weather that pressure up the middle. There are very few that are. What else did you see from that Saints offense? And quite honestly, is any of this fixable for them?
Well, I mean, again, they only had the ball for 20 minutes, so you're kind of out of your normal offense. And they certainly do look different from the first 2 games where they put up 91 points, but you were taken out of your offense. But they couldn't hit the big play. And Carr gets hurt his oblique. He hurts his oblique in the fourth quarter, ends up going into the locker room. Jake Haener takes over. So we have to keep an eye on that injury as they have Tampa Bay coming up, and then the Broncos, and then the Chargers, and then the Panthers. So out of schedule, it can be a little easier, but certainly in schedule, or out of division, I should say, in division, because they have a battle with Tampa Bay, who they play next, and obviously with Atlanta as well. You would think it would be fixable, Mike. Again, they got taken out of their game plan. The injuries are just piling up for them, as you mentioned, especially on the interior of that O-line, which definitely hurts the running game and protection of Carr. So are they fixable? Yeah. I mean, you saw some of the things that they could do. Now, you knew they weren't going to put up 40 in every game, but it has really gone the other way. And I think a big part of that is injury. But every team deals with injury. Every team has to overcome. Every team has to have the next man up.
And we told you guys that because of that injury in the middle, where, hey, listen, a lot of teams aren't just 3 guys deep in the interior. You were going to have trouble, and particularly with Chris Jones. Last night, according to Next Gen Stat, Chris Jones' average get-off time was 0.67 seconds. That was the fastest average get-off time in a game by a defensive tackle in the NFL, not just this season, but the last 3 seasons overall. So they got a marquee performance from arguably the best defensive tackle in the NFL against a position of weakness for them. and it completely undid the game plan. He was deadly. That defense was deadly. And Patrick Mahomes finally got over 300 yards passing this season. It was the 46th time in his career that he's gone over 300 yards since 2018. That's 14 more than the next closest quarterback in Jared Goff. So the Chiefs, they are all right. Coming up next, though, we talked about this entire game and haven't even gotten to the best play. Where were you when Colin Saunders decided to hit the gas and make big man moves? We will highlight large excellence next year on Gojo and Golic.
On Gojo and Golic, we're the intersection of pop culture and large excellence. So when we get a moment like the Colin Saunders interception from last night, it's a highlight of the show. Take a look.
Here we go, second down and goal. Mahomes in the gun, the two in New Orleans. P. Ryan in motion. There's the shotgun snap, the fake handoff, the quick throw at the goal line. It's deflected and it's intercepted on the play by Saunders. He runs the big man, the 10, near sideline 20, on the near sideline 30. Got a blocking from behind. The former Chief is taken down. The Saints big man got it on the ricochet at the goal line on a pass intended for Smith-Schuster. That was a thick pick. That was a thick pick.
It was a thick pick. It bounced off of Schuster's hand, and Saunders one-handed it.
Our friends Kevin Harlan and Ross Tucker on the call for Westwood One. So we're mixing it up a little for our Beef of the Week, Gojo and Golic's Offensive Lineman of the Week remix. Defensive edition presented by Campbell's Chunky Soup that eats like a meal. So we got a Taylor Swift connection, linemen doing big things. That play was made for this show. So congrats to Colin on, wow, just an incredible play, an incredible night.
Yes, my Taylor Swift Eras Tour sweatshirt in honor of both the Saunders brothers and Bill Belichick yesterday. Those who know. Dead, an incredible intersection. And for people that are fans of this show, you already knew what got talked about in the broadcast last night, that Colin Saunders, the NFL defensive tackle who has played for both the Chiefs and now is on the New Orleans Saints, is the brother of Cam Saunders, who has become arguably the most famous backup dancer on the planet for Taylor Swift on this Eras tour. Both incredibly dynamic athletes, an adorable relationship between the two of them. Colin was asked who his brother would be rooting for, and he said, "It's me. I'm buying his ticket. She might be his boss. I am his blood." And so he goes out there and balls out in the big stage, gets the interception off the tip pass down in the red zone, and then Dad hits the gas. They mentioned that he was a high school running back. In addition to being a star defensive tackle at Parkway Central High School in Missouri, they're local and nearby there. He put the ball in the opposite arm. He moved one of the defensive backs out of his way and so that he could go and scoot his whole ass off. You had to be so proud of your defensive tackle brother. 6 foot 324. Those are beautiful dimensions.
Oh, I mean, it was, and his brother Cam was at the game, by the way. They had a picture on the sideline before the game, so all the talk of Taylor Swift being at the game, but Cam was there, brother, great picture on the sideline. And yeah, 15.79 miles per hour, the third fastest speed by a ball carrier over 320 pounds. And you saw the classic picture of a lineman who had to run being congratulated on the sideline while sucking oxygen out of the oxygen tank. That's what the oxygen tank is made for. Linemen who have to run and run faster than they normally do for a longer distance than they normally do. And he did. He was all smiles, but he had that oxygen mask on. But what an athletic move for a big man. The ball did ricochet, and Saunders reached out with one hand and snagged it in the end zone with his back turned to the field. Had to flip around, do a U-E, and just start sprinting down the field. You knew he wasn't going to make it the whole way. God forbid what would have happened to cardio-wise if he had to run 100 yards. But it was unbelievably impressive and unbelievably fast for a big man.
I just looked up on the St. Louis High School sports website, Parkway Central High School, where he went. Colin Saunders was a running back in addition to being a defensive tackle, and his last year there had 92 carries for 723 yards and 13 touchdowns. He averaged 7.9 yards a carry in his last year in high school. So that is a dynamic athlete. And like I've always said, football is a very simple game at its core. You get your best athletes the ball in space. That's why the defensive back, his buddy on the team, didn't read the scouting report because he was there getting in the way, and he said, "Hey, brother, listen, I got places to be. Dinner reservations, party of me, down the field 37 yards off this return." I was so proud of him in that moment. A night where, and again, shout out to Troy and Joe Buck, because I know and I have a feeling they're not card-carrying Swifties and they're not guys that were well-versed in the arts before. But as soon as it happened, they had the whole package ready to go for this. That's preparation meets opportunity. That's a great broadcast, and that's people understanding what the real stories that people need to hear are last night. So shout out to Large Excellence, making its presence felt on the Monday Night Football stage.
So Team Taylor Swift had multiple things to cheer about last night, right? Obviously, her guy Travis had a big night, and her backup dancer Cam, had a big night with his brother with the pick and the return, even though they obviously didn't get the win. So a good night, but a good night for big men. Anytime big men get to carry the ball and be athletic, it's a cool thing to watch.
It is an absolute movie, and Colin Saunders was the star of it last night. So shout out to Colin, shout out to Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal and lets us honor big fellas doing incredible things out here in the world of sports. So we've got that going on, certainly in Monday Night Football last night. It was a ton of fun. It was awesome. But Jesse, speaking of solid offensive lines, let's talk about some more of what we saw over the course of this weekend. There was a lot to sink our teeth into. We react so much yesterday. We've had time to sit here with it a little bit, and I want to start with the other undefeated team in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings, who went across the pond and had to get the job done in a different way this time around, especially considering some of the pressure that their quarterback Sam Darnold was under.
Yeah, Sam Darnold in Week 5, according to Next Gen Stats, had the most time to throw, 3.37 seconds on average. Didn't quite help him. He did struggle against the Jets, but the Vikings did pull out the win. So we had Sam Darnold regression game, guys. We knew that it was coming. We knew it was coming. We knew we were going to see it. He still got it done. The Vikings still got it done. So how do we feel about Sam Darnold right now? Can the Vikings overcome his regression? What do we think?
I think eventually water finds its level. Now maybe he'll have a better season than some thought, but I just don't know. I mean, I understand he had the most time to throw, but he was sacked 4 times. He's been sacked 15 times this season. Now, not nearly the top. I think that's Deshaun Watson or Cleveland quarterback's been sacked 26 times. But he's been sacked, at least 3 times a game, so he gets pressured by more than that. They actually only had 1 offensive touchdown in this game, 3 field goals, and the defensive pick 6 by Van Ginkel. So this was not a great offensive output, but the Jets do have a big-time defense, which is going to lead the Jets' big-time defense to glare at the supposed offense led by Aaron Rodgers that isn't producing anything at this point. But, Mike, it's a resurgence for Sam Darnold. We always favor the player as a couple of former players, but it's a long season, and their defense can make up for any offensive issues they may have, like a regression game from Sam Darnold, because that defense is playing ball. But I have to believe that the Sam Darnold play early in the season will start to level off some.
I went back and watched this game again, and what I came away with was actually less this is the Sam Darnold regression game and more the reminder that Sam Darnold is still largely a product of what's going on around him, and that the system here offensively, the play calling by Kevin O'Connell, having Justin Jefferson out there, all of those are the important factors. And so when you get a Jets defense that was as disruptive as they were in that game, after their opening drive, Sam Darnold was pressured on over half of his dropbacks. That's not a way that he can live and survive. When you look at the difference between most quarterbacks in this league and the ones that are truly special, that catch all of our eye, what Jaden Daniels is doing right now, what Patrick Mahomes did last time, the hallmark of that, Dad, is they erase mistakes that the people in front of them make time and time again. They help out the offensive line. Sometimes that goes too far to a detriment, but in general, that's the biggest differentiator. And Sam Darnold is one of those guys that when the pressure is as high and turned up as it was against the Jets, he's not going to be able to overcome that. So that's what I think it was, a reminder that Sam Darnold's not going to overcome anything for you on offense if you're the Minnesota Vikings. He can still be very successful, but it's only going to be as successful as the parts around him and the system put in place. Or it's a reminder, that's a system he's only been a part of for a year. Jared Goff's the high-end version of this, right? Where Jared Goff's a really talented passer. I mentioned Patrick Mahomes has now 14 more 300-yard passing games since 2018 than the next closest quarterback in the NFL in that span. The next closest quarterback is Jared Goff. Jared Goff's played really good football, but he operates in a very specific way. But he knows the system very well now with Ben Johnson. They're in year 3 of that, all that. Sam Darnold's in year 1 in a system that he is not built to overcome was the biggest takeaway I had from that game.
Yeah, and then now they get a bye, and then they have the Lions. Then they're home against the Lions, so a big division game. And then the schedule gets kind of easy comparatively. It's the NFL. I know anything can happen. They play the Rams. They play the Colts. They play disappointing Jacksonville. They play the Titans. They play the Bears. So it's certainly winnable games for them. And I agree. Kevin O'Connell has a great system. The defense is, and that's been a worry for Minnesota over the last couple of years. The defense under Brian Flores is playing some ball. The 2 D coordinators that are dialed in right now are Flores and Spagnuolo for Kansas City. They just have tough game plans to beat.
Let me ask you this question, Dad. Both of these teams now still undefeated through the first 5 weeks of the season. Which one do you trust to take that further? I understand Kansas City has the bye week coming up, so part of that skews in that way, but which of these teams would you be confident takes this further into the season?
Well, I mean, I obviously, because of Pat Mahomes, I say Kansas City. Both defenses are playing well. Both are aggressive defenses. Both have go-to offensive weapons, Travis Kelce being the one now for Kansas City once Rashee Rice got hurt, and Justin Jefferson, obviously, for Minnesota. Both running games, the running game for Kansas City, though, Kareem Hunt came in and did a really nice job, though Pacheco is out. But you have to trust Pat Mahomes more than you trust Sam Darnold, right? and you have Kevin O'Connell, who calls a great game, but you have a Hall of Famer in Andy Reid leading that offense. So I would definitely lean toward Kansas City, even though they are having some red zone issues and getting threes much more often than they would like to instead of 7.
Yeah, we heard that from almost everyone after the game last night from Kansas City as they're going into the bye. What's the focus going to be? And almost to a man between Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, Juju Smith-Schuster was, we got to turn that into 7 far more often in the red zone. And so that's why I think you continue to see the creativity down there, because some of it's got to be manufactured when you're as limited with some of the weapons as Kansas City is right now. We've only got a couple minutes left here, and so I want to introduce something to you guys that I heard Chris Long talking about in his podcast yesterday. We were talking about Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions a little bit in reference to Sam Darnold and working in a system that helps accentuate a quarterback's strengths. Strength might be the operative term for the Detroit Lions, because this weekend we saw the Seattle Seahawks go and lose a really weird game to the New York Giants. No Malik Neighbors out there, and it didn't matter. They still went out and got it done. There's some questions we can ask about the Seahawks, Dad, but really the answers might be more in what we're getting from the Detroit Lions. Chris Long pointed this out on the Greenlight podcast, that there might be a Detroit Lions hangover effect. Going back over the last couple of seasons, and especially this year, you can look and see teams that have played the Detroit Lions the next week so far in 2024 have all lost their next game, and usually in embarrassing fashion. The Lions beat the Rams week 1. The Rams then in week 2 lost 41-10 to Arizona the next week. They beat the Bucs in week 2, who lost 26-7 to the Broncos in week 3. They beat the Cardinals in week 3, who got blown out by the Commanders 42-14 in week 4. And then they beat Seattle last week, who lost to the Giants 29-20 at home. So something to keep an eye on, courtesy of our buddy Chris, that playing Dan Campbell and that mean bunch might have a hand. And Dad, you can watch that Seahawks game. That group got pushed around up front by the New York Giants in a way that's been atypical so far this year.
Yeah. You would think that this wouldn't be something that would happen in the NFL with professional football players, where you play one week and then you get smoked the next week. But Detroit does play a physical style. They're not the only team, obviously, but they play a very physical style led by a very crazy coach who loves a physical style. I don't know if I put anything into it more than a coincidence, quite honestly. It kind of looks good when you write it out on paper for 4 weeks, but I don't think I really put much into this.
I don't know. We might have to get Chris over here and see how much research he's done on this. Again, I only looked back one season, but the proof is in the pudding. Teams that play the Detroit Lions over on the year thus far. We'll see if that trend holds, and we can follow that one around. Coming up next, though, it's time that we go back to college. It was a wild weekend in the sport that saw massive upsets up top and drew the ire of the legend. We'll check in with our buddy Paul Feinbaum, who had the easiest job in sports yesterday. Next on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. here. Guys, the vibes in Tuscaloosa are not it right now. The aura, not good. The sky is falling for the Tide after an upset loss to Vanderbilt. A lot of questions surrounding Kalen DeBoer, questions mainly being asked by the Alabama fan base. So, of course, we were treated to something really special on the Paul Feinbaum Show. Legendary caller, legend. Here's a snippet, just a snippet, of his 6-minute rant.
Paul, I'm in sports hell, brother. I'm in sports hell. I never thought I would utter these words. Vandy is my daddy. Can you believe that? I'm going to be with Alabama every friggin' game. But that don't mean I can't be pissed at what I seen Saturday on the field. Alabama don't lose to Vandy. We don't lose to Vandy. That is friggin' pathetic, Coach DeBoer. 40 years, dude. You've been here 4 weeks, and you already lost to Vandy. This is equivalent to coming home and finding your wife in bed with the neighbor. This is what this is equivalent to, Paul. And I'll say this for this. Me and K-Dub both agree. You could never trust her again. You might stay with her for the kids' sake, but you could never trust the woman again. And the same thing's true with Coach DeBoer. You can win a natty. We can't trust your ass now.
Okay, obviously not easy for anybody to replace Nick Saban, no duh. But Kalen DeBoer, even talking to you guys last week, shows a bit of a different approach. You heard the rant from legend there. Is this a matter of the fan base just being used to like a different type of coaching?
Oh, I mean, Dad, different is only tolerated so long as it works when you've been used to one thing. And when they believe, hey, we've won one way for so long, and a coach comes in and wants to do something different, he's got more of a relationship with the players, that stuff's all fine and good until you lose, and then it becomes a weapon that you've just handed them to blame you with. So that's where Kalen DeBoer's at now, and it shouldn't change his approach at all. You've got to be who you are as a coach. Who he's been as a coach has been incredibly successful so far through his head coaching tenure, but we've seen even at Notre Dame, who hasn't won a championship since 1988, what it looks and sounded like after a loss to Northern Illinois, after a loss to Marshall, at a place like Alabama that's been the premier program in college football for Nick Saban's entire tenure. This is the apocalypse, and it sounded like it there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the fan base is so used to not only Nick Saban winning and winning championships, but his style of coaching where he demands excellence from his players. And I'm not saying Kalen DeBoer doesn't, but it's a different relationship with Kalen and the players. And every coach has a different relationship. No two coaches do it the same. They all have their different personalities. It's hard to believe that the legend would say, you might win a natty, but we can't trust your ass now. Isn't winning a natty it? I mean, if he were to win a natty, you're still not going to trust him. And I guess his thought is, we can't trust you in maybe some of the down games because Nick Saban didn't lose those games. Nick Saban, you always talk to us about the best team in the country. You win the games you're supposed to win, and sometimes it's close, but normally you blow out the teams that you're supposed to beat. And Alabama, for the first time in a long time, didn't do it with a different coach. And it's amazing the standard that Alabama holds, not only with their players and their coaches, but with their fans about losing one game to where you shouldn't lose it.
And with their alumni and with their boosters. Dad, you called games with Bill Curry for a lot of years, and if anyone knows about the ire of Alabama fans in that organization, it's certainly Bill Curry and plenty of people who have been crushed under the weight of that standard at that program. And listen, legend, I'm sure, is not alone. He's a longtime staple Paul Feinbaum caller, but there's probably a lot of other people that feel that way because, Dad, the sentiment is what I've always said. Trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. And right now, Kalen DeBoer is coming over. It's almost like you remember when David Blatt came to the Los Angeles Lakers and he had all this success overseas coaching and then came to the NBA, and there was this disconnect between him and LeBron and the current players because he felt he was owed respect that he had not yet garnered at that particular stop and in this particular league. It's the same for Kalen DeBoer now where, yeah, he's got a bunch of respect from his coaching tenure so far, but for that fan base and for those alumni, it's, hey, well, now this is Alabama. Now this is the SEC, and things got to get done a little differently around here if you want us to love up on you. The big question going forward is, Dad, can Alabama overcome this? Like, I tend to think in an expanded playoff and with what we've seen already from them a week ago, they own the best loss and the best win in the sport, you could argue, in back-to-back weeks. Going out and beating then number one Georgia and then turning around as losing as number one on the road to Vanderbilt the following week. We know the offense can sustain. The defense is now what we have questions about. They're going to have opportunities for more big wins. The problem is a lot of them are on the road. You are at Tennessee in 2 weeks. You are at LSU 2 weeks after that, at Oklahoma 2 weeks after that. That's daunting stuff for a defense that now everyone's going to be looking at going, we can get over. That's not the impenetrable force it used to be.
Yeah, next 3 games, South Carolina, Tennessee, which had their first loss, Missouri, which had their first loss, and then a bye, and then LSU, which has 1 loss. So it's weird to say, but you don't expect a letdown in the bigger games, right? You look at a team like Vanderbilt, and you say, you got to, and we even talked to Kalen during the week about prep for it, and he talked about as players, you prep for it and you get over the big win that you had in Georgia and you move on, you be professional and you move on to the next game. And the defense just obviously giving up 40 to Vandy just wasn't ready. And not only did it get fans, it got players. Malachi Moore, a 5th-year guy, a 2-time captain, lost his ever-loving mind at the end of that game in just a way that Alabama players don't, right? And listen, he got chastised for it by former players and certainly by former Alabama players, and he apologized for it, but it just got to everybody, and he really, expressed it on the field, unfortunately, in a horrible way. But this one just got to everybody, just affected everybody. And, hey, listen, is it a wake-up call? Should Alabama players need a wake-up call? At the end of the day, they're 18 to 22-year-olds, right? And while they are coached differently, it's still a coach who has won wherever he's gone. So it's like a mushroom nuclear explosion effect in Alabama right now. But I do think things will calm down, and I think things will be okay.
And I think when you sort through the wreckage, I saw Bill Connolly over at ESPN talking about this in his SP Plus rankings for this upcoming week. And you look at the underlying metrics from this game. Alabama had a 56% success rate compared to Vanderbilt's 43. They averaged 8.8 yards a play to Vanderbilt's 5.6 and had 20-plus yard gains on 11% of their snaps and scored a touchdown on every red zone trip and somehow lost. Part of this is Diego Pavia played his ass off, played one of those all-time college football games that are going to sustain him for a long time. And him and Jerry Kill, that both came over from New Mexico State together and is now an advisor on that staff, deserve a ton of credit for the moxie they brought to that game. But for Alabama, it might not be as bad as it looked, even if it feels that bad for the team, provided they can mentally withstand that. So, Dad, that's just one of many takeaways from the team where Alabama, I do think, positioned to be able to bounce back from this, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. Texas A&M, you could argue, had one of the bigger wins of the weekend. That was a dark horse we talked about before the season. I think is very much stepping into the light now, the way that they played with Connor Wegman. Ohio State, Dad, they're blocking people again. Like, watching that Iowa game this weekend, Iowa's defense might not be as good as it once was, but it's still pretty damn good, and Ohio State is now moving people up front. The biggest question of this season answered by their thickos. And, Dad, for us on the Notre Dame front, I am a little scared of playing the service academies. I don't know if you saw, Army and Navy are 5-0 at the same time for the first time since 1945, and they both got a quarterback here. Bryson Daly for Army and Blake Horvath for Navy are out here not only running it, but slinging it here, and Notre Dame has not one, but both of those service academies on the schedule that usually gets mocked and should now get us some respect because those are games that scare the hell out of me right now.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, there's some teams playing well. I mean, Clemson, a blue blood for the championships that they've won. I thought they would be more down. You didn't think they'd be down as much as I did. Their offense has suddenly caught fire. BYU undefeated, SMU with a big win this past weekend as well. There's some, Pittsburgh undefeated, 5-0. So that they're definitely, and it happens every year, but there seem to be more this year of kind of surprise teams 6 games in.
Yeah, Jesse, let's talk about this Clemson team and this ACC situation because it's kind of fascinating now at the top of the conference. It really seems like a two-team race.
Yeah, so they got another win, moving back up into the top 10. They had that opening loss to Georgia. We'll talk about Miami in a minute, but slowly creeping back up. So are you impressed with Clemson so far, the resilience there?
I am, Dad. So you look at the ACC's two hopefuls now. Clemson moving back into the top 10 like Jesse mentioned. Miami sitting there at number 6. And I actually think that reflects how close that this might be. Because this Clemson team, Dad, we knew defense was going to be the hallmark. And that unit maybe hasn't been as great statistically as we expected coming into the season. But Cade Klubnik, with now another year under his belt, looks a lot more comfortable and in control of that offense. Phil Maffa, their running back's the star. And the offensive line, probably blocking the best of any Clemson offensive line I've seen in recent memory. And so all of those things make me feel a little bit better about it, Dad. Cade Klubnik is still just a very good college quarterback, right? He's not transcendent. I don't think he's going to make a ton of extra effort plays. And right now, that's kind of the difference between them and Miami is Miami's got a quarterback in Cam Ward playing transcendent football right now. You look, he's almost doubling up most of the statistics that Cade Klubnik is putting up on his side, and he's doing it at times having to put the weight on his back himself. So I think Miami still gets the edge at this point. But, Dad, this has become a much more interesting ACC race once Florida State departed than I anticipated because of what Clemson's put on tape so far this season.
Yeah, I agree. Their offense is coming along, and Miami pulling off two last-second wins over Virginia Tech and Cal. But again, let's see what plays out with SMU and Pitt. SMU and Pitt play one another early November. Pitt also plays Clemson, so they get a shot. Now, neither one, I believe, plays Miami. But it's getting more interesting with teams that we didn't. They kind of like the Big 12 with BYU, leading the way there. Kind of there are some, kind of surprising teams that have a shot as we're right around the halfway point of the regular season.
Yeah, I would say this ACC race, SMU and Pitt would be a definite surprise. But you mentioned Clemson and Miami don't play each other during the regular season, so this could be a legitimate ACC championship matchup. Clemson's going to have a matchup with South Carolina at the end of the season in a rivalry game that's really interesting. If South Carolina is healthy at the right times, and we saw Lenora Sellers not as healthy this week, Rocket Sanders, both those guys banged up, going in and facing an Ole Miss team that was heavily motivated, and they go out there and play the worst game of their season so far. That might not be who shows up at the end of the season, so Clemson can't overlook anyone because, again, I don't think the margin's that high. The offense has put up some big numbers since that Georgia game and washed off some of that stain. It's what we talk about, Dad. And I think the thing I'm most curious about this year is we learned a lot during 10 years of the 4-team college playoff. There were certain things that you could count on. 2 losses automatically got you out. Usually if you got blown out by anybody, you were going to be out of the mix when it came time to grade with a fine-tooth comb, when it had to be 0 or maybe 1 really good loss. But the rule was always lose early and then bury it with production after that. And Clemson does have the opportunity, especially with the way their schedule is set up, to be able to point and say, hey, this Georgia team still consistently one of the best in college football, and look how much better we've gotten, even if we've not faced anybody potentially until the ACC championship that's anywhere as close to as good as that Georgia squad.
Clemson losing early, start looking good. Texas A&M lost to Notre Dame in week 1, and they're looking good. You're right. You'd rather lose early than lose late. And while Miami is what, ranked 6, 5, 6 area, you just wonder. I mean, 2 really close games that they had to pull their butts out of the fire. The schedule we talk about is favorable for them, but the last 2 games they almost lost. So while you can say it's favorable, how favorable is it with sometimes the way they're playing?
Yeah, they've certainly made it more difficult than it need be surviving. And you wonder how much people even notice because that game was so late on Saturday night between them and Cal. We got a little Pac-12 after dark effect as they deal with their new ACC counterpart there. We'll get into plenty more college football as the week goes along. But coming up next, the return of an old friend here on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. We've got some good series brewing in baseball. Last night, the Royals and Tigers both evened up their series. Skubal went 6 shutout innings before Kerry Carpenter hit a 3-run homer in the ninth. Then the Royals got the 4-2 win in the Bronx. Guys, it marks the first time in the Division Series era that all of the series are tied at 1 game. Pretty stinking cool. A lot more on MLB playoffs with World Series champion Adam Wainwright is coming up on the program next. But first, we are going to sit back and do what we do best. That would be a little scrolling.
Major League Baseball is a particularly cruel sport because you take arguably the biggest sample size in all of sports in the regular season and crush it under the weight of clutch performance in these small series in the postseason. Dad, Jesse, I saw this stat from ESPN MLB insider Jeff Passan last night as the Detroit Tigers get a big-time win over your Cleveland Guardians, Dad, to even up that series at 1 apiece. Kerry Carpenter went out and hit probably the biggest hit of his career. Certainly it was the hardest hit of his career and a massive home run for this franchise. And he hit it off Emmanuel Chase. Emmanuel Chase had allowed 5 earned runs in 6 months during the regular season and allowed 3 earned runs on that one pitch that ultimately lost the game in the top of the 9th inning to lift them over it. It's just such a cruel reminder. You can do so well for so long, and if you can't time it and peak at the exact right time, which is that way in a lot of sports, but feels especially heightened in Major League Baseball, man, oh man, you're going to have a bad time. I loved the interview from Kerry Carpenter after, Dad, too, where he said, I blacked out after that. I have no idea what happened. The weight of that moment felt immediately by that dude.
Yeah, what a shot in the 9th inning, a 3-run shot. Impressive. Royals get an impressive 4-2 win over the Yankees in the series where Aaron Judge is 1 of 9, got a infield hit, and Bobby Witt Jr. is 0 for 10 in the series. So the two stars, the 1 and 2 player, MVP of the American League are not doing anything for their teams right now.
I think I saw last night Aaron Judge finally got a hit after he had been 0 for his last 16 postseason at bats. So something in the water as it pertains to that. We'll talk to Adam Wainwright coming up in about 15 minutes here on Gojo and Golic and take a look at what's going on. He's been part of the national call with Fox with our buddy Adam Amin over there. And so plenty to get into as that Mets-Phillies series produced some fireworks over the weekend as well. I do love what we got last night, Dad, in the NFL, where Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, hyper aware of what's going on around them, which are the things that you can do, by the way, when you're the really good player and the really good coach who have all this experience in these championships are you have time to not only focus on what you've got to do and do it very well, you can focus on what's going on around you. And both of them, Patrick Mahomes, I think has ownership stake in the Royals, right? So he was talking about them right after, tweeting about them right after. Andy Reid made sure to mention them in the press conference. And it's a cool thing. We see that very much in college, Dad, where sports figures, especially the football coaches on campus, go out of their way to try and make sure they show love to some of the other sports teams. It was pretty cool to see the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid all as aware of that moment and really embracing what a sports town Kansas City is.
Well, and they have a bye week, and the Royals are now playing in Kansas City. So those guys are gonna go check out the game. It's Kansas City's got it going on now. Their football team and their baseball team.
Yep, no, very cool to see with them. So again, we'll talk plenty more Major League Baseball coming up in about 15 minutes here with Adam Wainwright. But in the meantime, Jesse, we're a terminally online show, and so that means we like to get to the scrolling. So we thought we'd do some of that live on air with you guys because that seems very productive.
Yeah, a new segment we're calling They See Me Scrollin'. So basically all the things that we saw on the timeline this weekend. Let's start on Saturday, early on Saturday, 2:11 p.m., according to the Texas A&M police report. So a drunk guy was ejected from Kyle Field. Not surprising, but instead of a night in jail, he was, according to this tweet from the police department, released to his sober wife, which, I mean, Texas A&M police report Twitter, I was not familiar with your game. Oh my God, a fate worse than death? I don't it would have been better for him to spend the night in jail, frankly.
Yep. Oh, would have been better for both to have a cooling off period of the wife not having to bail out to come collect a drunk husband, and a husband not to have to just bow his head down and not be able to make eye contact with his mad wife. You just need a cooling off period. And a night in the cell would have been the perfect cooling off period for both parties in this one.
Yeah, I'm surprised she came and got him. That to me is the stunning part there. But to Jesse's point, a huge tip of the cap to that police department, whoever runs their Twitter, for the subtlety of that humor. There is nothing worse than being a sober person around drunk people anywhere. Like, quite honestly, you mentioned spending a night in the tank. The night I spent a night in the drunk tank in college my freshman year when I got popped for being for minor intoxication, I blew a .03. I was basically sober in a tank with a lot of people who had a lot more fun than me that night. And so while everyone else is in there having a massage train, putting off their problems till tomorrow, I'm sitting there stewing over the problems of now because I'm sober in that environment, and being sober around drunk people sucks. I'd have to imagine that goes double for your spouse, who you're now also angry at for going out here and embarrassing you in public. Dad, I'm sure something that you've never done to my poor mother.
No. She's only had to avert her eyes a few times in our career together.
Oh,
yeah,
that's sweet.
That's true. They say chivalry is dead. Not in this case, although we need an update. This is the guy that we need Paul Feinbaum and his callers to do the research on. I have to find the follow-up for what happened to drunk Texas A&M fan released to, quote, and now infamously sober wife. Jesse, what else we got coming up?
Yeah, so late in the Clemson game, we had a little throwback to 2018 that sent Twitter wild. So we had this guy in the upper deck reading a book with his shirt off. So this is either like a copycat, a callback to 2018, or could this possibly be the same guy doing the same thing in a Clemson blowout? What do we think? Is this, as they say in the serial killer world, a copycat killer? Or do we think this is the same guy reprising his role?
Yeah, I need to take a closer look at this, quite honestly.
I'm going to say it's a copycat. I think it's a copycat. Years ago, years past since this happened, but it's a strange look. Either way, copycat or same guy, it's a strange look.
I will say, judging by the hair, the first picture of the guy in the original, the hair very gray in the 52-3 loss that Florida State suffered to Clemson. In this one, the hair's a little darker. Honestly, the shape of their breasts, very similar, and that was what gave me pause a little bit. They've got similar hang in the nipple area, and so there were some similarities there. But, Jesse, I do just think this is a case of someone emulating one of their heroes from this rivalry, and I'm glad. You know what? We are honoring what came before us. College football is about tradition, and it is about pageantry, and sometimes it's about popping your tarp to read a book when things aren't going your way or the season isn't going your way. And this fan in particular understands ball to that level.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to be
a body double.
You got to be comfortable in your skin to take your shirt off, right, and look like that. I mean, I took my shirt off. Are you calling him brave,
Senior?
Maybe drunk. But
Hero?
I'm yes. Oh, either that or you just don't give a damn. I took my shirt off once to film something when I was with the Eagles, and I was a professional athlete at the time, and I was sickened by the rolls and by the hangage, and I was a pro athlete. I was like, oh my God, I will never take my shirt off around a camera or a camera again. And I guess to be that secure in yourself, to be shirtless, hey, I guess there's something to be said for that.
Wait, Dad, I want to be clear. You're someone that's claiming that you are shy around the camera, and yet one of the most scarring experiences of my lifetime was you taking and recreating the Kim Kardashian butt photo because you made an ill-advised bet on Notre Dame football. I have that right.
So that was tastefully done. That was from the back. So you couldn't really see any man boobish hanging from the front or any kind of jelly roll in the gut. It was from the back, and I was able to kind of stretch out so there really wasn't any folds going on. And then I think the oil helped. I think oiling up helped. Now, your mother did oil me up with a paintbrush, which, is a story for another day, I guess.
God. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and Mike had to take
this
pictures of it,
was
Jesse.
tastefully done. Nothing about this was tasteful. This was crass, offensive, and has been the source of a lengthy lifetime of therapy bills for me. So no thank you, no room at the inn. Move on, you sick man. You don't get to claim to be some sort of prude after what I saw there. Jesse, please move me away from this so the PTSD stops rattling my brain.
Okay, so we all followed the Vanderbilt goalposts through the night as they made their way to the to the river, after that win against Alabama. So a fine coming their way after the upset, but really, who cares? Totally worth it. Perhaps some karma vibes from all the bachelorette parties out last Saturday that definitely got their nights ruined. Good callback from our friend Nicole Arbach from the NFL draft. But how crazy seeing video after video throughout the night, and you just have to think those bachelorette parties had no idea what was going on, probably furious by the whole situation.
Had to be in hell, because the one thing you don't account for is a bachelorette party. The NFL draft is one thing, but Vanderbilt football having historic wins, that's definitely not something you've had to have on the bingo card for a while, Dad. So you can understand them being upset, because you shouldn't have to plan around that in Nashville.
Oh, the bachelorette's thinking the streets are going to be clear. We're going to have no issues with the streets because Alabama is in town, and then their street was mobbed and their bachelorette parties ruined. Now, hopefully some just played along and joined in and enjoyed the fun and didn't let it ruin their night, but I have a feeling most let it ruin their night.
I have a fear that if you're doing your bachelorette party in Nashville, that's definitely the type of thing that you would let ruin your night.
Yes. I think that's probably a pretty accurate summary of events there. But for everyone else, an incredible story, and I'm pumped for all you guys. Vanderbilt, enjoy this moment, bask in it, relish it, because who knows how often you're going to get these kind of things here. Diego Pavia gave you guys all a gift. Speaking of gifts, Jesse, the internet gave us a gift when we threw out a prompt last week about old people doing funny things. I know Dad thinks we're making fun of him, and maybe we are a little bit, but these are legitimately great, and I want to see if there are other people that identify with these parental behaviors.
Yeah, so Senior, we talked about your habit of doing a word search and Sudoku on flights. Gojo, you put it on the timeline like you said. We asked the question, and we got a lot of great responses. So what are some of our favorites? Let's go through a few. Let's see. My dad has a group chat where they talk about life insurance, and I'm not sure any of them are in the industry. That's a pretty interesting one, guys. Senior, do you talk about life insurance?
You know what? You know who the life insurance benefits? You kids. It benefits you kids.
Maybe.
So do you care if we're life insurance agents or not, or talking about life insurance and money used for our funerals so there'll be more money for your kids? So it's for the benefit of you kids. You want to mock us for it? Go ahead.
Senior, are you saying that your life insurance beneficiaries are your children and not your wife?
No. It's my wife for sure. But that's just money that goes to her that'll eventually go to the kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go. See, I appreciate that, but Dad, some of these are endearing, like this one from Tommy Joyce, though. My mom pays the family cell phone bill in person. She's aware she can play online, but she's convinced it's easier to drive to the T-Mobile store and pay at the register there than change how she's done it for the last 15 years. A good reminder also, never jump off your family phone plans.
Oh, never.
I just, and I should have known this, I just realized your mother pays all my kids' phone bills.
Yeah,
what the hell's going on?
It's the family plan.
It's the stupid plan.
No, it's cheaper. It's actually cheaper if you guys were
we're helping you guys.
Yeah, if you were to kick the kids off.
No.
It would be more expensive.
This is one of my favorite ones here. Nicole Arbach, our friend and NBC Sports College Football Insider, said, my dad prints off his schedule for the day from Microsoft Outlook every day so that he can check the items off by hand. Dad, this reminiscent to the story you told about my dad will do his college notes for his football games on his computer. He will print them off and put them in a physical filing drawer and then delete the files on the computer.
Yes, I like the physical paper in front of me where I can check everything off, because on the computer, you have it on the computer, but what if you need to go somewhere else on the computer? What if you need to research something else? Then you're off that page and then I got to get back to that page. But if I have a written down page in front of me where I can manually check off the things I need to do, I'm golden. I'm good.
Okay.
This one might have been my favorite one and the most quintessential version and extension of what my dad just described there. Scott B. says, my mom printed out an article and mailed it to me and then emailed me to tell me to look at the mail. Flawless parent behavior, no notes.
Incredible.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? I find that perfect parenting.
Could have just attached it to the email. Senior, do you see how that would have worked?
But how great is it to get mail? How great is it to get mail? Huh? I mean, think of what your parents are doing for you. They're letting you enjoy the fact that you get to physically have some mail in your hand to open up. It's a beautiful thing. They're doing it for you kids. And you guys mock the elderly.
This is why the environment is dying.
Old man saying stupid stuff yet again.
All right, we will take a brief break from mocking our parents to talking a little bit of Major League Baseball. We mentioned some exciting action last night over the weekend. For more on that, delighted to talk to MLB on Fox game analyst Adam Wainwright. Spent 18 years in the bigs and now going to be a part of the call as he's been so far this postseason for the Mets and Phillies. Him, Adam Amin, and AJ Pierzynski on the call, 5:08 p.m. at Citi Fields. You can also check that out and watch live on FS1. Adam, good morning. How you doing, man?
Morning, doing great. Doing great. How are y'all?
Doing well. It's been an exciting postseason. I mean, this time of year we know is always a huge favorite for everybody involved. But for you, especially getting to be involved in the series that you've been involved in so far, how impressed have you been by some of these performances as we've got this round evened up at one apiece across the board for the first time ever in the history of the DS round?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Baseball has just been so fun to watch. All these games, and I think it's really good for the sport that teams like Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers go into the postseason, continue playing their great ball that they played all year against these teams that are, honestly, they're just heavy underdogs going into these games, and they're playing inspired baseball. It's just exciting for the game. There's so many markets that have a chance this year, and I love that. But the series that I'm in specifically, this Mets and Phillies, it's like Rocky and Apollo Creed, every inning. Whoever wins, it's like whoever, just runs out of innings is going to be the one that loses. They keep punching back every time, no matter what the other side does. And it's just been so fun to be on the call of it.
Going back to the last game in the last series, the Mets have gone 3 straight games where they've taken the lead in the 8th inning or later. How often can you keep living on that and hanging on to that?
That is a tough way to survive, but that's the way they've been surviving the last month. They've been doing that over and over and over again. And I've asked several of those players. I played with 3 or 4 of those Mets players. And I said, how are you winning these games? How is it possible? And Harrison Bader looks me right in the face and he goes, you know why, Papa? He calls me Papa. Because it's our destiny. And they believe. And that's, they went into this series. No one's expecting them to beat the Philadelphia Phillies, except for all the people that really been paying attention. They are probably the hottest team in baseball. Those Mets and the Detroit Tigers came in just as dangerous as anyone as there was. And if you believe and you have talent, then you can do some really cool things. And they have a very good lineup. They have some really good starting pitchers, and their bullpen's been stepping up. So, and they got one of the best closers in baseball. I mean, they have all the things that you need, and they just got to go out and execute like they've been doing.
You've been a part of a World Series run though, and translating those things from regular season to postseason. How difficult is that, where you've got such a big season the way Major League Baseball does, this huge sample size, to go out here and find your best when you need it at this time of year?
Well, you see it so many times where the best team in the regular season doesn't win. And it's these wild card teams that have been going through the World Series so many times lately. And it's because they have got to fight their way in every single day leading up to the postseason. It just gives them an edge. It gives them a competitive edge. Once you get into the postseason, anything can happen. We've seen it over and over again. But these teams like the Philadelphia Phillies, they have the best overall team in all of baseball. I believe that. I really do believe that. Now, whether they can go out there and they're playing against a team that believes, so it's going to be tough. But what I love about what the Phillies did last game, they answered back. Every time the Mets, they took the lead early, the Phillies answered back with the Bryce Harper big home run in the middle of those innings. And then down the stretch, every time they put Harper on, the guys behind Harper, Castellanos, stepped up when they had to. And now that you see the Phillies, they believe. And that's the thing. These guys have been through the postseason over and over again. So you got 2 teams that believe. And they are fighting, man. You can tell they want it. Both those teams want it so bad. The Phillies, they want to deliver on all this promise they've had the last couple of years, and the closeness they were last year and the year before to really bringing home a World Series title. It's just been they've been right there, and they want to deliver. And then you got this team, the Mets, that are finally delivering on the promise that those big offseason signings that they went out and did a couple of times, they're delivering on that. And the great thing is they've got both fan bases excited, and the fans at Citizens Bank were absolutely rocking, and I expect nothing less from Citi Field.
In series sports, in the playoff sports, a lot of times there are players that you don't expect become the hero, but you also during a series need to rely on your stars. How is it that the top 2 American League candidates for MVP, obviously Judge, I believe, is going to win it, but Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. Judge is 1 for 9 in the series, and Bobby Witt Jr. is 0 for 10. How do you explain that after the regular seasons they have?
Well, I explain it like this. These teams, the Royals and the Yankees both, when they look at that series going into it, they say, Aaron Judge cannot beat us. Bobby Witt cannot beat us. And you saw in the first series, Bobby Witt had the game-winning hit both times. And so the Yankees come into this series and they go, all right, well, Bobby Witt, we're going to pitch him extremely tough. And I think what happens is we've seen this over and over again this year already with the teams we've seen play. The stars, your stars have to show out. They have to show up and they have to show out for you to win eventually. But your stars, they have to get good at passing the baton. A guy like Freddie Freeman is really, really good at this. Who takes what you give him, and if you don't give him anything, he trusts the guys behind him. And I think in these big moments, they're going to pitch him so tough. If they will be patient, they're going to walk a lot. They're not going to give him great pitches to hit all the time. If they'll be patient, they'll get in great counts. They'll walk a lot, and they'll get better pitches to hit when they get when they get ahead in the count. But I think so many times stars, they know that their team and their fan base is relying on them so much. They want to do something extra, and so they end up chasing a little bit more off the plate than they normally do. So I think that's probably what we're seeing so far. But also, it's not that big a sample size. Bobby Witt, I think he's 0 for 10 with 4 or 5 punch outs. But Bobby Witt also can go like 14 for 14. Like he can flip that script in no time. Aaron Judge can get so lava hot that everything melts around him. Like these guys, they can one swing of the bat can send them on a tear that those numbers, no one will remember those.
You mentioned the star power, finding ways to deliver, trying to go over the top to make big plays. Easy segue to talk about the other series in the National League between the Padres and the Dodgers that really, while all the focus is on that Dodgers roster, emotion's probably been the hallmark of the first couple of games of this series. If you're both of these teams that have these star-studded rosters, the Padres, one of the other hottest teams in baseball, how do you reset after all of this stuff has bubbled to the surface in this series?
Well, I think eventually it's going to come down to, if I'm the Dodgers, I'm getting back into just playing our game, just getting back into doing what we do, putting the pressure on the other pitcher. They're going to face Michael King, who had an incredible first outing in the postseason this year. Great trade for them, by the way. But they just have to get back into doing what they're doing, because every time it gets chippy, I think the advantage goes to the Padres, because the Padres come into this series, they're the little brother. They got nothing to lose. Nobody's expecting them to win, even though they bumped the Dodgers last year. So I think the Padres probably with their pitch, the way that they're pitched, even though they lost Musgrove, man, that was really sad. I love watching that guy pitch. Yeah. I think the Padres may have the overall best team, but the star power that the Dodgers lineup has, the history that they have in the postseason, they just need to get back into what they do. And I guarantee you those veteran players are saying that inside the clubhouse. Guys, just calm down. Let's just do what we do. Let's be who we are. Let's not get caught up in the emotions, because you saw Manny pull the guys together in the dugout the other day. They're rallying around that. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is wake up the other team in a fashion like that. So the Dodgers just need to play their game, and the Padres need to keep playing off all this stuff and getting their fan base fired up, because they are inspired right now.
You talk about pitching around stars, like what we talked about Bobby Witt Jr. and Aaron Judge. With all the talent the Dodgers have, can you do that with Shohei?
Well, you can't do it with Shohei because he's at the top of the order. He's at the top of the order. It depends on, especially not first time through, but it depends on where you are in the lineup. I mean, right now, Mookie's not swinging the bat like we've seen Mookie swing the bat. If Mookie starts getting on fire, then you have to pitch to Shohei. And we've seen what happens when you pitch to Shohei. He's just the most fun guy to watch right now. It's just so fun to watch Shohei Ohtani. But it's harder because he's in the leadoff spot, and he does have guys that are very accomplished behind him. Judge in the middle of the lineup, Bobby Witt in the middle of the lineup. Even though there's some players behind them, they're not at the very top of the order. So it's a little harder. Then when Shohei gets on base, the stolen base potential, he just adds so much to the game. It's just can beat you a lot of different ways.
So as we look around now, we mentioned we've got all these series tied at 1 apiece in the division round right now. I know you're calling the Mets-Phillies series, so maybe we can exclude that. But of the lower seeds, who do you think has the best chance, I should say, of pulling off the upset and moving on to the next round?
Well, I appreciate you letting me leave that off, because every person in the Mets fan base right now thinks that we're going for the Phillies, and everybody in the Phillies fan base right now thinks we're going for the Mets, which I think means we're doing good. You know, we're calling this biasly. But you know, I do expect the Guardians to come out of that Tigers series. But if the Tigers get out of there with a guy like Scooble at the top of that, they could make a run. The Royals, I'll tell you what, that's a fun team to watch. The Royals could beat the Yankees. They could do it. They really could do it. Those first two games, it's been a battle, you know, with Reagan's yesterday. They got him out of there after 4, though. The Yankees did what they needed to do against Reagan's, getting him out of there to win that game. I'll tell you this. I'll just keep it simple. I think the Padres have a very good chance to go all the way. And I think the Mets have a very good chance to go all the way. And of the lower seeds, like you said, the lower seeds. Now, I want the fan base to hear me. Of the lower seeds, they have a great chance. I do expect some of these big teams to step up, but those teams that I mentioned, those guys could go all the way.
Awesome. I would say making it abundantly clear. Like you said, I saw you and Adam tweeting about that, Adam Amin, and I think you're spot on. If everyone's accusing you of bias, that means you've called a hell of a game, which is why everyone should check it out. Again, you, Adam Amin, AJ Brzezinski on the call for the Mets and the Phillies, 5:08 p.m. Eastern on FS1. It's going to be awesome. I know we're looking forward to more exciting postseason baseball. Adam, thanks so much for the time today, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Dad, it's the toughest part about calling all these games and these broadcasts, where it's the littlest thing where now, even as I get ready to go call Mountain West football right now, which I understand is great and important for these players, I love doing it, but compared to the MLB postseason, not certainly the biggest show, I still worry about things like, am I wearing a tie with the colors of one of the teams present in a way that a fan base is going to pick up on and give me grief for?
Oh yeah, you have to keep that stuff in mind. But you're right. If both sides are accusing you, you are calling a hell of a game. But because you just have to sit there and laugh at those tweets. It's just hilarious.
It is. It's unbelievable. And I understand fan is short for fanatic. People are wired to be hypersensitive, especially this time of year where you come in after a long season and baseball gets national broadcasters where locals have been. But still, leave Adam Wainwright alone. He's doing a good job. We'll talk about some of the rookies doing a good job and one getting ready to make his debut next.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Rookie QBs in the NFL have been making waves this year. Caleb Williams got the Bears back on track with a win over the weekend. We have not been able to stop talking about Jaden Daniels this season, but another rookie QB has his team at 3-2 and in the playoffs if it started today. It has not been pretty for Bo Nix, but wins are wins. Although even Sean Payton says there are some kinks to iron out, if you will.
Have these conversations.
It's part of the deal. Listen, last year, all of a sudden, it's just, there's still a little bit of Ferris Bueller in this player that we got to get rid of. All right, talking about Bo, and I love him to death. And so sometimes it's my love language. All right.
Like, not sure Ferris Bueller is the analogy that he's looking for. What?
I think because he explained it to say that he's got a little bit of like Maverick to him and kind of quirky and does his own thing. The funny part of that is picking Ferris Bueller as the reference for a guy in Bo Nix, who I get we make Bo Nix's old jokes because he played more college football games than anybody we've seen in quite some time, but still probably not a reference that he's going to get, although he did say he's seen the movie and does.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if he would get that reference. But listen, he's a guy who comes with confidence after 61 starts in the NFL or in college. I don't put anything to any sideline blow up ever because it's in the emotion of the moment. It probably looks odd because it's a rookie quarterback with a very, very few starts in the beginning of his career, arguing with a wily veteran coach who's known to be a quarterback coach, to be like, wow, this is pretty wild. A new student yelling at a tenured teacher. But again, I don't put anything on any sideline argument in the heat of the moment. And, Bo Nix, all three, Bo Nix and Caleb Williams are starting to play a little better and get a little more. Jaden Daniels has had, I think, his finger on the pulse a little quicker than the other two have.
Yeah, I'm glad Sean Payton used love language because I've always said conflict is the love language of a sideline for football and for a lot of sports where I can get to the result I want quicker if we both trust each other enough to have some loud conversations and get through all the pretense. You don't got to qualify it. We'll get right to what we're both bothered by. And, Dad, you can spin that as a positive that, hey, to argue your point like that, especially with a rookie talking to a veteran head coach, you got to really believe what you're arguing on. Yeah. And that will require you to know the subject matter. And I think that's why Sean Payton, it's his demeanor anyway, but also why he's going to be hard with Bo on this stuff. Because the one thing you see, Dad, I went yesterday just as kind of an exercise, and I watched Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix one right after the other. And you see the clear gap in ability between the two. It's not comparable what Jaden Daniels can do from an arm talent standpoint, from his ability to create on the run standpoint, all those things. And so when you don't have those tools in the bag, if you're Bo Nix, the arm's a little stronger than I remembered seeing on college, and he can make some extracurricular plays happen. But in general, he's going to have to be dialed in on the details. So Sean Payton, who I believe was getting on him because he flipped the formation he didn't want flipped when the play call went in, Bo's going to have to know that stuff cold because he doesn't have the ability to overcome errors the way some of his peers do at that position.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I'm with you. Healthy discussion on the sideline means Bo Nix seems to be sure, at least from his side, about his subject matter enough to not just, smile and nod at the coach and say, yes, sir, which I'm sure a coach would like to have happen, but to be able to bark back and give a reason for doing something on the field.
See, you always complain that I didn't genuflect and kneel at the altar of Mike Golic Sr., the two-time Radio Hall of Famer, when I got to do this, but it's just because you had imbued me with so much confidence in the subject matter that I felt like I could battle back when you were clearly wrong, which you are pretty often.
You didn't know the subject matter. You were such a newbie. You needed to be molded by my hands. You needed to be shaped. You needed to be guided, and you fought it.
that you're Frankenstein and you're horrified at the monster that you created. Because if you're claiming Molden, then you got to accept the consequences on the other side, Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh, God.
Yeah, box you in right there. You weren't expecting the Frankenstein reference. Got to keep you on your toes. That's what goes on. That's what Bo Nix has done to Sean Payton. He's keeping him young out there by going and barking at him on the sideline. But, Dad, he's now got a bunch of games under his belt, and you can start to see some of the confidence that's come with getting out there and playing early. And with the Broncos, that team still, the game that they went out there and won against the Raiders, largely predicated on that defense that's overperformed this year and the rushing attack on the other side. It's what we've seen for a bunch of these guys, even Jaden Daniels. You go and watch that Washington game from this past weekend, and it's a lot of impressive stuff from Austin Eckler, from Brian Robinson, from Jaden Daniels as a part of that run game that really got them off the ground at the beginning when that Cleveland Browns defense still looked like that Browns outfit. It's going to be a different story because we talk about all these guys getting the benefit of reps with what we've got potentially going on in New England, Jesse, as it seems like they might be getting closer to pushing the Drake May button.
Yeah, trending like we're going to see Drake May. Gerard Mayo was asked yesterday about the play of his current quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. Here's what he had to say.
Gerard, how would you evaluate Jacoby's performance yesterday?
It just wasn't good enough. I thought we played well enough defensively and on special teams to win the football game. And look, as the quarterback, and he understands this, he touches the ball on every single play, and we didn't win the game or score enough points to win the game. And I think he would echo that same sentiment, that it wasn't good enough.
So Schefter tweeted yesterday, a QB change could soon be coming to New England. And guys, not a moment too soon, like everybody calling for it after another poor performance by Brissett in a very winnable game for the Patriots. So what do we think? Is it Mayday?
It's going to be Mayday, but it's not going to turn their season around. It's just about starting Drake May's clock. I mean, the quarterback's been sacked 19 times. The tops in the league is 26 by the Browns, I mentioned earlier in the show. Been sacked 19 times. Jacoby Brissett, it can move, but is not a running quarterback, and neither really is Drake May. And Drake May is a rookie, so he's going to hold on to the ball longer than Jacoby Brissett did and make some poor decisions because he's a rookie quarterback. That's what rookie quarterbacks do. So is it going to turn the foundation of this team around to them suddenly winning? No, it's not. But you pick a time when you have a bridge quarterback like Jacoby Brissett on when do you go to the rookie? When you see the rookies is progressing in practice, is progressing in the film room, is progressing at the chalkboard, is progressing enough to where his eyes won't be too bright when he gets out in the real line of fire during a game. And then you go by the season. Where are you in the season? Are you winning with the bridge quarterback or are you not? And they are not winning. So that's when you put everything into the formula and you decide to make a change and start the experience clock for Drake May. And I think that's where we are.
Jacoby Brissett was the most pressured quarterback in pro football. He's pressured 50% of his snaps so far this season. That's more than even Deshaun Watson or Will Levis. It's been hell out there. But this is what Jacoby Brissett was brought back to do, to be a sacrifice at the altar of the first quarter of this season, to try and see if they could get away with not playing Drake May. But to your point, Dad, at some point, we knew this was not necessarily going to be a salve for the fan base to try and give them some hope, but it's just the reality of the situation. That, all right, if we're going to go out there, you talk about the other, 51 guys in the locker room all the time. At the very least now, you can start to say, all right, well, we're laying the foundation for something. They're bad every week, and that's tough to go through during the course of the season. So at the very least now, and I remember I had this conversation, as a veteran, I was a fifth-year senior at Notre Dame, and my O-line coach sat me down after a couple of games where I was playing poorly. It's like, listen, if you keep this up, I can get a freshman experience right now. I can get a young guy who's going to be here longer experience that's going to be valuable for them later on. And that's sort of the situation they're in now. Jacoby Brissett was never going to be able to lift them over the pile on this. And I think he knew that in his heart of hearts. It was a no-win situation for him, given what this roster's at right now. The O-line already struggled. David Andrews going out for the right at this point, also adding to the pile for that. And so all that put together, you get Drake May out there. He's going to take a bunch of lumps, but he's also used to getting out of trouble the way he had to at North Carolina plenty during in his career, and he's going to have to put that to use pretty early.
Yeah, he definitely is. Again, this is not going to save the season. It's just going to start Drake May's clock. Every player in that locker room knew it was going to be a long season, but now they can see you're building a foundation to move forward.
All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you have to miss any of our show live or our great guest, shout out to Adam Wainwright, former MLB pitcher and current analyst for the Fox broadcast, going to be on the call for the Mets and Phillies game coming up tonight. You can catch our interview with him wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Dad, Jesse, let's get started off with this. We've talked a lot about the Alabama upset at the hands of Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia, who's now become a household name around the sport. He's a guy that grew up lionizing Johnny Manziel, watched that upset win over Alabama. He said over, I think, 100 times during the course of his life leading up to this moment. And he was ready for it. As part of his post-game interview with Alyssa Lang, he said, Vandy, we bleeping turnt. And now apparently is getting ready to turn that into some cash. He tweeted out his agent's cell phone number on Twitter the other day for all NIL inquiries and said, Vandy, we turnt, which, Dad, I'd have to imagine is going to be on shirts all over the Nashville area sooner than later.
I mean, what a great move. In the era we're in, where players can seek money, to tweet out his agent's phone number to get deals is just, it's a snapshot of where we are with college athletes now. To be able to, this was such a dirty word, the bag of money under the table, players getting money secretly from donors, to now everything being basically legal, to where you're tweeting out your agent's And your agent, by the way, college athletes having agents, by the way, tweeting out his number. And who knows where it'll go, because who knows how well they'll do. They play Kentucky, they play Ball State, they play Texas, they play Auburn. Who knows if the winning will continue, but I hope this guy gets himself the bag.
He probably should have just thrown his Venmo handle in there as well, but...
Honestly, not a bad idea. As if he's going to have to pay for any drinks around there anyway in the near future. Although, as Jason Fitz points out time and time again, Nashville is a Tennessee Vols town, not a Vanderbilt Commodores town. Maybe that'll change at this point, but it might still be hard to come by. So I'm with you, Jesse. Dad, you mentioned some of those other games coming up, though. Diego has made life for those coaches so easy during that week, because you know how it is. I'm sure a lot of those teams in the SEC had seen Vanderbilt on the schedule prior and maybe exhaled a little bit, unclenched their jaw, and now they can all say, look what they did to Alabama. You think they can't do that to you, as they grind them in practice that week. So they will now get everyone's best shot. You're not going to sneak up on anyone, but at the very least, you're going to walk into it fully in the light with hopefully a new bag full of cash if you're Diego right now. Grab that net, catch that beautiful butterfly, brother.
Wow. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
It really is. Speaking of a beautiful thing, Jesse, let's talk about true love.
Okay, let's talk about this relationship, not true love. So let's talk about, we've talked about Bill Belichick. We've talked about his new media career. We've talked about his new relationship. But now apparently we can talk about which Taylor Swift song is his favorite. We got a beautiful sunset photo on Nantucket, courtesy of his girlfriend. And look what he's wearing. That would be a Taylor Swift sweatshirt, one of her Eras Tour sweatshirts. And yeah, Junior, I don't know. I don't think that I can roll with this being a case of true love. Yes, you're wearing the matching sweatshirt. You're matching Bill Belichick. Yeah.
I listen. So, true love, whatever. If they're happy with each other, then fine. I mean, then we're happy. If they're happy, we're happy. I mean, if they're two consenting adults happy in their relationship, then so be it. The question is, there is no doubt that if this shirt was purchased, she bought it for him, correct? I mean, there's no doubt about that.
I don't know.
If it was purchased, it may have been a gift.
Maybe his
He's
granddaughter
more than
likes
enough to
Taylor
give it the
Swift.
coach's cut.
Yeah. I was just saying maybe.
What'd you say, Jesse?
I said maybe his granddaughter likes Taylor Swift because he has grandchildren.
Okay, I don't know if we need to age shame. Age is just a number, and they're allowed to love.
Oh, you have no idea if you need to age shame. You had a whole segment of age shaming earlier in the show.
I'm just saying, I think he's closer in age. She is closer in age to his granddaughter than him. So I just thought I'd just throw that in there.
Do you think he prints out articles that he wants her to read and hands them to her physically? Or Bill Belichick has probably gotten onboarded into modern culture faster than all of that, to where he even laughs at some of those things that he probably used to do. For a man who probably made a living with a fax machine for a long time, I bet he's gotten pretty well versed in airdropping photos that he's had to take for her.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, completely different. There is no way Bill Belichick airdrops a photo. No shot.
What?
No, I know. I certainly
Dad, he's
can't.
dating a 20-year-old
maybe
man,
Bill.
Yeah. How old is she actually? 24? Is it 24? Yeah. 24.
I think 23, 24.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I have you kids do, those kind of things for me. He has her to do those kind of things for him. So I couldn't airdrop a photo, but I would just have your mother do it. Or ask Sydney to do it, or you, or Jake, or Jenny, or somebody to airdrop the photo.
Yeah,
that's what I'm sure Bill does.
She's Gen Z, so yeah, she's probably on the cutting edge of these things. Is she Gen Z? Is she younger than Gen Z? I don't know.
Yeah, she could be Gen Alpha at this point. Either way, we know at the very least he knows how to airdrop Ring doorbell footage, so there's definitely that. Jesse, let's get to the third here and celebrate the human body in a different way.
Actually, unfortunately, I think he doesn't know how Ring cameras work, and that's how we ended up in that situation. But this next one comes courtesy of the New Heights Pod Twitter. A guy in the crowd just leveled up. You've heard of signing babies. You've seen the funny videos of stuff like that happening. This guy in the crowd removed his leg. He took off his leg to get the ESPN crew to sign it. So I mean, it looks like it's like a knee down prosthetic there. It's like you can see a foot, you can see a shoe on it. And he just has that brought over, and the ESPN crew, God bless them, doesn't bat an eyelash and just starts signing.
I mean, Dad, at some point, like, obviously, there's all people trying to get stuff signed at these live events. You've been around at a bunch of these, and people have the opportunity to be close to some of the guys they've watched on TV. So there are plenty of people trying to do that. It's impossible to say no to the guy who's holding his prosthetic leg for you to sign. That's an automatic pass, go collect $200.
Yeah, and this wasn't the set was on the field. So this guy, it's not like he had his prosthetic leg and handed it to Scott Van Pelt, who was the first one to sign it. There was actually a security person who went and got the leg and walked the leg over to the set. That Scott Van Pelt grabbed the leg first, signed it, and then passed it to Ryan Clark and whoever else was on the set, Jason Kelsey and whoever. So, I mean, this was a process. I mean, this just goes into what is the oddest thing you ever had to sign. Now I wouldn't sign a baby. It was Eagles camp one year, and I was coming off the field and signing autographs, and there was a young lady that wanted me to sign her baby, and I'm like, I'm not signing a baby. I'm not. No. I'm just not going to do it. I've signed arms, shoulders, and things like that. Weird things. But I'm not signing a baby. I'm not putting ink on a baby.
Yeah.
I'm not putting ink. I'm not doing it.
If the parent's fine with you putting ink on their baby, then why are you worried about it?
Because he's got a conscience. He's worried about the baby.
Not doing it. I mean,
because babies have never gotten ink on them at any point in the course of being babies.
Gojo,
You've never seen a little kid covered in ink.
This is just hysterical, like, guy who doesn't have kids being like, oh, what? Like, you never got ink on a baby? Like, yeah, no, you don't get ink on babies.
No.
That's not a thing.
No.
Oh, you've never seen a baby's never come back covered in marker after getting into a bunch of stuff. You guys have never seen that with kids ever. Oh, here's kidless Mike, who's never seen a human child before.
No, you're talking about like a toddler using like washable crayons.
Not a baby.
Yeah, a baby getting like
there's a difference
marker.
of a toddler and a baby.
Oh yes, again, because the toddlers never get into stuff they're not supposed to. That never happens, right?
Yes, markers, but a baby has no say in the matter, and a parent is asking you to sign a 8-pound ball of flesh newborn baby. I mean,
the baby didn't ask to be born, and you guys were fine doing that. So now this is where we get ready for it. Draw the line.
Oh.
Those are the kind of puns you can expect around here. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.